We're going to start with our first meditation. So sit comfortably, sit up straight, be in a very alert position, and as you hear the sound of the bell, just let it clear your mind and bring your attention to this present moment. And as the bell fades, stay with your attention here. And we'll begin by taking 3 deep, relaxing breaths together. First deep breath in. And exhale. Second breath. Exhale. Third breath. Exhale. Now continue breathing consciously. And be very aware of your breathing. I encourage you to breathe more and more slowly until you're breathing as slowly as possible without being at all uncomfortable. Make sure that your eyes are still underneath your eyelids. And notice how this slow, conscious breathing relaxes you and soothes you and comforts you. As you're breathing slowly, let the tension fall out of your body. become aware of your physical self. And if you notice any areas of tightness or tension, consciously allow them to relax. Let the muscles in your face relax. And come into this moment. Be very present to where you are, the things you're sensing. Be aware of this room. The energy of this room. The energy of the beings in this room. Begin to smile. And generate good feelings inside you. Allow yourself to be present. And by doing so, you are allowing the peace and joy that is your true nature to shine through. Just enjoy it for a few moments until you hear the bell and we begin Satsang. Welcome, welcome everyone to Satsang. Thank you for being here. Hi Kim, Ann Murphy, been a very long time. Tracy, thank you for being here. Sometimes that initial meditation just feels like enough, doesn't it? Don't want to spoil it with words. Okay. As usual, I have sent out some thoughts for you to contemplate this week. It says the fruits of spiritual practice are feeling peaceful and joyful for no reason, sleeping well, feeling vibrant and healthy physically and mentally, having great relationships, no longer being bothered by the actions of others. Still waiting on that one. A sense of love for everyone and everything. A desire to give instead of take. An excitement about life coupled with a general sense of happiness and living a life that's fun instead of suffering it. Sound good? It's really true. You know, enlightenment and all of these things seem so up in the clouds. Sometimes people point at me and say, well, you're enlightened or whatever. I don't like it. Because I'm no different from you. And I don't want to be in any category different from you. And I want you to understand that your teacher is no different from you. And no teacher is different from you. Because your mind sets you up to think, oh, well, that's for him, but that's not for me. I'll never get there. That's not true. You know, this is for everybody. And this is about having a really fun life. That's what this is about. I always like to say I don't know where we've come from. I don't know where we go to after this. The only thing that I can be certain of is that we are here. And if we're going to be here, then let's not suffer here. And the very strange reality is that, the very strange truth is that we create our suffering for ourselves. When we learn and see clearly how we're doing that, there's a very natural inclination to stop it. If you keep putting your hand in the fire and you're getting burned, you stop after a while. Usually you stop after the first time. Joyful for no reason. Sleeping well, feeling vibrant and healthy physically and mentally. Having great relationships. No longer being bothered by the actions of others. A sense of love for everyone and everything. I love that one. For those of you who have pets, right? Don't you just love your pets so much that it's like crazy? What if you felt that way about everyone and everything? What do you think life would be like? You have to not be interested in how they behave, because how they behave doesn't matter. Even when your pets don't behave the way that you want them to behave, it doesn't matter. It doesn't change the way you feel about them. You might get angry or upset for a moment, but then you kind of laugh at them and you go, "Oh, you drive me crazy," and you just smile. Because it's what you're giving that really matters. It's staying seated in your natural state, that flows very naturally. A desire to give instead of take. That's a really interesting one. There's a lot of takers. But you find that giving, the act of giving, giving is giving without needing anything back. When you're giving to get something back, that's just a business transaction. But these are the real joys of living, is giving. When I say joys, I'm not telling you if you want to feel joy, then do this, you should do this, or you should do that, this is the right thing to do. That's not what I mean. What I mean is follow your own internal compass. How does it feel when you give to people? How does it feel when you're generous and kind? Yeah, something inside you really agrees, doesn't it? When you're trying to get something, so much tension, so much discomfort. The opposite of peace and joy. We talk a lot about wanting here, When you're wanting something, you're suffering. If you're suffering, you're wanting something. An excitement about life coupled with a general sense of happiness and living a life that's fun. Like a little kid, Christmas morning. Do you remember those feelings? You couldn't sleep, couldn't wait to get out of bed. Wow. when you begin to step into the pure seeing and begin to step out of mind, and you begin to realize where you are, you are in this miraculous, amazing, magic garden. If we want to see miracles, we watch movies, Avatar or something. Wow, how cool that world is. How amazing is it that a seed falls into the ground and grows into a tree, or grows into a tomato plant, bears fruit, apples, tomatoes that you can eat and enjoy. That's crazy. But it's just normal to us. So we're just like, whatever. It's just a tree. You take a seed, you put it in the dirt, you put some water on it, here it comes. All the animals, all the fish that we saw, and the amazing things that we saw. We saw a big, I think it was leatherback turtle, right? Loggerhead. Yeah, it was big too. And we saw a huge barracuda, huge. And you're just like, my God, like this place is just miracle after miracle after miracle. Kids know it. You bring kids somewhere and they're like, wow, 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 oh my God, wow, oh my God, Mom, Dad. Hey, how are you? Another miracle. And we're going through this life and we're like missing it. I think that one of the best and closest relationships that I have is with my cat. I swear to you, we communicate. We look each other dead in the eyes. And I talk to him, and he understands. And we're so close, it's unbelievable. I'm so present to him and feel so much love for him. He'll come and lay on his back in my arms, and I just scratch his belly, and he'll just, like a sack of water, every muscle in his body is relaxed. And it's just the most unbelievable thing. And I'm like, there is this little miracle, this little being, this beautiful animal. We all love like animals so much. And I'm like, I don't watch TV. I hang out with the cat. Watch TV when I have this amazing, amazing being with me. It's just unbelievable. Like, I can't describe it. I should stop trying. It's going to sound ridiculous. When you truly come into presence and you truly let go of this mind-based, conceptual-based world and that you've created in your mind, and you start seeing where you really are and what's really going on, it is unbelievable. And so when you're in the world and you're just like, you're just living with this excitement and this. I was so excited to go diving, and even more excited, like, once I got in the water. For those of you who have never been diving, let me explain something to you. You go out into like what feels like the middle of the ocean, and you strap on, like, what's it, like 40, 50 pounds with the tanks and all that? So now you're like heavy, you know what I mean? So, like, what's the most counterintuitive thing to do when you're strapped with weights? Jump in the water, jump in, 80 feet of water. And so, I mean, you're out in a boat and you're out, and you're like, okay, now I've got all this weight tied to me. Now I'm going to jump in. And so the first time, you know what I mean? It was like, okay, I was good. I had to take a breath, but then you usually flip back off the boat. And once I was in the water, I was like back home. I was just like, all right, any discomfort left me. And we got down, you let the air out of your BC and you get to the bottom and you're just, you've seen these gorgeous, like, saltwater aquariums. It's like that, like, times 1,000. And you're in it. You're swimming around in it. And you don't know what you're going to see. And you don't know what's going to show up. And it's unbelievable. That's just one experience that I had. Just one. And there's all kinds of it. When we do our Peaceful Mind Center Adventure Club trips, I'm always trying to expose you to just the amazing miracles. When we went to Norton, there were objects in the Norton Museum that were like 4,000 years old. You imagine? No cell phones. They probably made a lot of stuff because there was nothing else to do. It's just fantastic. It's life is really fun. Life is really miraculous. But you get tied up in the stories in your head, and you live here and not here. And the mind very skilled at making disaster out of it. To live life with excitement. Let me see, we'll get through this because there's more things I want to talk about besides this. But when you get a taste of this sweet fruit, your spiritual practice becomes a fun part of your life and not a chore. This is what I'm really pointing you to. Most people, it's like, oh, spiritual practice, oh, I gotta do this, oh, I gotta do that. What changes is you start feeling the results of your spiritual practice. You start feeling all the things that I described. And maybe it's not consistent. Very likely that it isn't. But you feel them for a moment. And you feel home. And you go, aha, this is very important. This is how I want to experience life. I want to be in this space all the time, or as much as I can be. And my spiritual practice, I can tell you, is tons of fun. All of our adventure club trips, that's part of my spiritual practice. Getting up and exercising and meditating and making good food and eating healthy. I love it. I love it. It doesn't mean that I'm not busy sometimes, or that I'm not tired sometimes, or that sometimes I don't want to go ride the bike. But I really love taking care of myself. When you get a taste of this sweet fruit, your spiritual practice becomes a fun part of life and not a chore. Why wouldn't you spend your days and efforts creating the most fantastic inner state possible? What's more important than that? There really is time. Why wouldn't you spend your days and efforts creating the most fantastic inner state possible? Your outer world will then be a reflection of the beauty of your inner world. Most people are doing the opposite. They're trying to make their outer world a certain way so that their inner world feels good. Does that work? For a moment. And then what happens? It changes. This world, this experience is bound to impermanence and change. And so when you're saying that out there needs to be a certain way so I can feel good in here, it doesn't make sense. Because that is always changing. So there may be a moment where things are like the way you really want them, and your mind is satisfied, and so your mind calms down. Your mind shuts up for a minute, and then your nature shines through. But then things change, and your mind says, wait a minute, I don't like that. And it's gone again. It's the opposite. The world is already beautiful. The world is already amazing. You don't have to make it any way other than it is. Just enjoy it. Just see it for what it is. Just see it for what it is. It's like Disney World, only for real. Just one amazing miracle after another. The opposite of that is that we're living in the world in our head that has lots of judgments and lots of conflicts and lots of garbage. I mean, listen, I've been doing this for a very long time now. And it's really funny for me to, you know what I mean? Interesting, puzzling for me to watch what people do. And what I used to do too. I absolutely. There's a reason I see this so clearly. I've been on both sides of the fence. But to watch what people do to themselves, to watch the suffering that they create for themselves, and I'm just saying, hey, stop it. Now, why does that happen? This has been coming up a lot this week. And it's interesting, like when I work with students, you know, typically what I want to talk about in Satsang is related to the things that come up, you know, when I'm working with students on Monday and Tuesday. I like to see what's in the consciousness and then talk about it. We are such creatures of habit. You are far more habitual than you know. And so, we habitually create discomfort and pain for ourselves, and we don't even realize that we're doing it. So, for most of us, pain is a part of everyday life. Now, pain, discomfort, there's lots of different names for it, but I like pain. People don't like to hear pain. I'm in pain. I'm not in pain. But pain is very accurate. And pain is a spectrum. There can be just this very mild discomfort of pain, and then there can be some real serious pain. This emotional pain I'm talking about. This energetic sort of pain. This weird sensation in our chakras, in our chest, that somehow continually is there. We generate that for ourselves. Now why? One, we're animals. Even Willow, who has had nothing but been coddled and loved and doted over and spoiled, and I just want to make the best possible life I can for him. And I have fun trying, you know? Even still, if I move a little too quick, he's like, we're wired like animals. We're wired for fear. Fear is a survival instinct. You know? A lion jumps out, you get afraid, you run, you survive. And so you have this like primitive wirings. Evolution is still happening. We're still evolving, and perhaps we're evolving out of this primitive wiring that no longer serves us into consciousness. But we create this strange feeling inside us. And we do it habitually. There are people who are identified with their pain. It's so funny. Sometimes a student will come, particularly like a new student, and it is suffering and suffering. And I say, okay, let me show you how you're doing this. Let me help remove that. And they resist. They don't know who they are without their pain. They are identified as their pain. How wonderful would it be to walk this earth without that pain? Do you even think it's possible? You are looking at me like, yeah, this guy, pie in the sky. It's possible. No joke. You're going to hear me say 1,000,000 more times to you that we're different people when we're in pain. We perceive differently. We choose differently. But we are so habituated into feeling that way, just like a bad habit. Believe it or not, I even hate admitting this, is that I used to smoke cigarettes. Ugh. What a disgusting habit. Much offense to those of you who smoke. It's horrifyingly awful and stupid, and I did it for almost 10 years, when I was very young. And it was just a habit. It wasn't until I went to see an uncle, my father's brother, who was very sick with emphysema and lung cancer. And he was dying. And he looked at me and he saw a pack of Marlboro Lights in my pocket. And he looked at me and he used to smoke Pall Malls, like drink cups of tar. And he looked at me and he said, he said, if I could give you this much of my pain in a cup, and have you drink it, you would never ever touch one of those again. And so I went upside. This was in like near Scranton, Pennsylvania, and so we were in the woods in the mountains, and I just kind of went for a walk, and I lit a cigarette out of habit, and I was like, I have got to be an asshole. What am I doing? What am I doing to myself? And why even? It was just a habit that I got into. Some friends were smoking. My parents smoked. And I just did it. I mean, because I'm mentioning that because it's so obviously bad for you. It's like, why not just sit there and hit myself in the head with a hammer, you know? In the same way, or similar way, you know, we're generating this pain and discomfort for ourselves over and over and over and over again. And we've got to become present to that. You can't change what you can't see. You know? You have to become aware that you're doing it and be aware that you can stop doing it. But these thoughts are such habitual, you know, our conditioning. Rinpoche used to say all the time, we're such slaves to our conditioning. We're slaves to our conditioning, to our habituated, conditioned mind. You might not be able to see your habituation, but you do see the effects of your habituation. The same relationships showing up, the same situations showing up over and over and over again. Your mind is the common denominator. When you step into spiritual practice, and you know, like what I read to you, all the fruit of that spiritual practice, you start to challenge those habits. What if being in pain was just a bad habit? It's a pretty bad habit. Our habits are so strongly ingrained in us. Our neurology gets set up to support our habitual ways of thinking and being, and our biology. And that's why when you're trying to make these changes, it can be so much resistance and so much discomfort. Because you're sort of wired to be in pain, wired to suffer in one way. But that's all the more reason to have a much stronger spiritual practice, which means create the time for your spiritual practice and actually doing it. And when I say spiritual practice, I'm talking about some very practical things. I'm not talking about, you know, some pie in the sky and praying for life to get better. I'm talking about cause and effect. I'm trying to inspire you to see how important spiritual practice is. I'm trying to inspire you to actually be engaged and involved in a for real spiritual practice. People look at monks and think, oh, these people, what are they doing with their life? They're doing the most important thing that there is to do, and they know it. And so they've dropped everything else. Now, I'm not saying that you have to live like a monk, but they're not the crazy ones. There's always time. If it's important enough to you, you will make the time. Hi, Jillian. Long time no see. It is your practice that leads you to the direct experiencing. And it is your practice that throws a monkey wrench into your habituation. We are such unbelievable creatures of habit. One of the most inspiring things that I ever heard that really changed my life was Albert Einstein's definition of insanity. Have you heard it? Doing the same thing over and over again. Is that it? And expecting a different result. I would do things early on in my practice just because I didn't want to do them. You understand that? I would do things just because I didn't want to do them. Because I knew that if I kept doing the things that I wanted to do and the things that I'd always done, I was going to keep living the way that I always had. And so I was wanting to break out of that mold. And I would do things that I would just never do. And I started to see parts of myself that I couldn't see before. And I started breaking up, smashing up my habituation and my conditioning. I stopped drinking. I stopped smoking. Why? Because I didn't want to. And I knew that what I was doing didn't work. That was all I knew. I didn't know what worked. I just knew what I was doing clearly didn't work. So let me just go try something else. Something else healthy. Let me just put that in there. You know, we just keep running that cart on the dirt path, you know, and it starts to be grooves in the path, and we just keep slipping into the grooves. So easy to slip into the grooves. So easy to slip into your habitual ways of thinking and being. You notice how hard it is to do your Zen list. Because it flies in the face of your habituation and the way that you're wired. That's all the more reason to do it. To try and break your habituation. Try to break your habits. Try to break your way of seeing things the same way every time, over and over and over again. Thinking the same way every time, over and over and over again. If we know that we are very how can I say it? Like, if we know that sort of habituation is our way, then can we take advantage of that? Your spiritual practice becomes your habit. You habitually eat well. You habitually exercise. You know, this is why I'm telling you always to try and start the day the same way, or as close as you can to the same way every day. Because you break up your old habituation and you're starting to retrain your neurology. And what used to be difficult is no longer difficult. And what used to be easy is no longer easy. If I were to sit and smoke a cigarette right now, oh my God, every cell in my body would throw up. And there was a time where I used to just casually do it. Alcohol too. So what are you hearing? I've been doing all the talking today. Go ahead.
So my first comment is I heard Tony Robbins once say that everyone always tells him what they don't want. And he goes, nobody actually ever comes up here and says what they do want.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, when you know what you really want, the things that are keeping you from that or the things you don't want start falling away. So that I was reminded of that, which leads to my question, which is, you know, I hear you say often that people don't know who they are without their pain or without their suffering. And so I might be in that category. And is that something, A, you can define, that, you know, like who you are? And then the follow-up is that a goal that I'm trying to get to be this definition of who I am without the pain and suffering,
let's just take
or
them,
a byproduct of
let's take them one at a time. What was A again?
Well, when you said people don't know who they are without their pain and suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So if you asked me right now, who's Greg without his pain and suffering, I'd probably go, I'd give you the old shoulder shrug.
Because it's been there for as long as you can remember, right? I mean, it's a great example, right? It's been there as long as you can remember. True?
Yes.
Yeah. You don't know who you are without it. You know, identified is a very, very, very important word in these satsangs. And I think it floats by a lot of people a little too easily. Think about what identity means. You know, this is what I am. How are you supposed to get away from what you are? When we're identifying with pain, when I am literally, you know, identified as my pain, I am my pain. I don't know what I am without it. And so when someone like me come and try to take the pain, you go, hey, and you pull it back. Because it is you. But is it really? one of the, how can I say this? The spiritual path is not acquiring anything. It's letting go of everything that can be let go of, to be left with that which cannot be let go of, but also cannot be described in words. The moment that you make a mental construction, a concept out of what you are, you lost it again. You're back in your mind. Do you understand that? If you don't understand that, then ask me. Because this is really, really, really important. You live in a world that's only in your mind. That's the only place that it exists. And who you are only exists in your mind. If 100 people met you, some would love you, some would hate you, some would be neutral to you. Which one are you? You are whoever you are in that person's head. So it's kind of easy to see that you meet 10 people and they all have a different impression of you, right? That makes sense. That's not right. Everybody perceives you a little differently. Maybe you remind them of someone they like or someone they don't like. And they sort of paint you with their own bias. But even your own view of yourself is just as arbitrary. I wish I could explain this more clearly. Because you're probably sitting there and probably was going, what is he talking about? I know that he makes sense a lot, but I just can't. Who I think I am is arbitrary? Yeah. Yeah. It's there is something beyond these mental concepts and constructs that is not a mental concept or construct. The mind can never understand the self. And the moment that it tries, it makes a concept out of it and negates it. The self is truly ineffable. In the most simple terms that fail miserably, but we need to feebly use words to try and get to this place that I'm pointing you to. Is just awareness. There is an awareness that is aware of your idea of yourself. There is an awareness that is aware of the pain. But that awareness cannot be described in words, and that's where this gets confusing for you. Because your whole world is described in words. Everything has a label. If it doesn't have a name for it, it doesn't exist. Or you try to make a name for it, or you make a name up about it. And so what you're suffering is the habituation and the habitual stories and the identity that you have created for yourself that's completely arbitrary. You walk out of here, a coconut falls on your head. Amnesia. You have amnesia. What problem do you have in that moment?
Something that I heard recently that really kind of, I think speaks to what you're talking about, is that, to be a spiritual person or to have a spiritual practice, you have to stop believing your mind. And for me, that's like, it's so foreign to think that I have to stop believing my mind. Like, how can I even be if I don't believe my mind?
Perfect.
And that just really, really resonated with me. And then, I guess when you were talking about pain...
Can I stop you there?
Sure.
'Cause you said some real gems there. Let's just start from the beginning. I have to stop believing my mind. Do you see how in your own rhetoric you recognize that there is an I that has a mind, and the mind is driving the I nuts, and the mind won't cooperate, and I'm going crazy, you know what I mean? In your own rhetoric, it's there. My mind. Who is the my? The my can't be described, and so it goes unnoticed. And then you said something very interesting. How can I even be? Like without my thoughts or something, you said. How can I even be without all of this garbage in my mind? That is the ultimate spiritual dilemma. And what you're saying, whether you realize it or not, is I am identified as my thoughts. Without my thoughts, I can't be. That is not true. I am identified as my thoughts. Was it Descartes that said, I think, therefore I am? The ultimate ruse, the ultimate lie. If he would have left out the I think, he would have been fine. I am. It's a strange, strange thing. Because you really have to give up. You really have to let go of everything that you thought conceptually to be real. This is not Earth. It is not Wednesday. It is not 8:25. I'm not Tom. You're not Jamie. Those are all just ideas in our head. You could go to court tomorrow and sign a piece of paper. Completely change your name. You could be, what did Prince call himself? Or was he just a symbol or something? I can't remember.
Artist formerly known.
Yeah, the artist. Yeah, you could be the person formerly known as Jamie. And then that's real. The mind, the thinking mind, is a wonderful tool. I had to put, an alternator and a serpentine belt in my truck. You know what I mean? I had the tools. I worked. It was really interesting to work with my mind and my body that way. And it's more fun when the job comes out well. You know what I mean? When it doesn't come out the way you want it, then you start throwing stuff. But the mind is not you. This is the problem, is that you're identified. How can I be without all of this? What that does is it has you hold on to this for dear life. Because without this, you disappear. But the only you that disappears is the one that never existed to begin with. The idea in your mind. It's really interesting when you go around and you ask people, maybe people that have known you for a while or known you since high school or something, and you think they think of you in a certain way, and then they tell you how they really think of you, and you're totally sideswiped by it. You know what I mean? Like the way that people view you. Because there's even your view of the way people view you, and even that's not even close to real. So what's important is that you realize that you're identified with all this junk, and you're believing all this junk to be you. And so you're holding on to it for dear life because you feel like, when I let go of this, I disappear. No. The lies disappear. And the truth comes forward. And that's a really wonderful moment, you know. And it doesn't hurt. It can be scary, and a lot of times, know this, when you're getting closer to, like if it was a curve, I'm drawing a graph, right? You know, you're getting closer to a realization, closer to an epiphany, and your pain and your resistance starts to go whoom, and then it goes whoom, straight to the ceiling. And you feel like you're going nuts, and then it goes bam, down to nothing, and then flat lines. The closer that you get to letting go of your mind and your thoughts about yourself, the louder your mind is going to scream. Do you remember when we watched Peaceful Warrior, and he was on top of the clock tower arguing with his ego? You need me, don't you do, and boom, he pushes him off the clock tower. It's like that. It's like, you know, you're like, you're letting go on faith, on trust. You're letting go because you have worn down so much these ideas of who you are and what you are, and you're starting to see that this can't be. And the wall gets thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. And then you get close to it and you're just like, I can't let go of this identity for I don't know. Because that's one of the difficult things that I have to share with you is that you're not this, but I can't tell you what you are. So now I'm asking you to let go of this branch that you're holding on to and have been holding on to. And you can't see the next branch. And I can't describe it to you. It is like, how can it be that all of this stuff in my mind, how can it be that this is basically worthless? I'm so invested in this. I'm so invested in my thoughts and my ideas and my judgments and being right and who I am and who I'm not. I'm so invested in that. I've worked my whole life to create this. Now you're telling me to throw it in the garbage? Yep. Because that's what it is. Would you like to continue with your other comments?
Yeah, and thinking about invested, just thinking about student loans as well. But I guess the other thought that I was having was, if I start to talk about my pain or my suffering, it seems like I'm almost already losing, or I'm almost already putting myself in a more challenging situation by identifying what's inside of me as some mental construct, like calling it something, rather than just, oh, I'm feeling discomfort or I'm feeling weird, you know. But if I'm calling it pain, then I'm saying that it's something, and it's something that I want to get rid of, rather than it just being something that's just there.
Whether you want to get rid of it or not is different. I mean, you have to call it something, you know? I mean, in other words, we're using words to have this discussion, so we're limited by the words, okay? I'm calling it pain because I just find that to be the most accurate. There is a spectrum of pain. You can call it discomfort. Use whatever words work for you. Remember, you're your own guru, so don't try to fit into any particular thing. So if you don't want to label it at all, you know, if you want to stay away from that word pain, and you just want to say, I'm experiencing some light or heavy discomfort sensation in my chest. You know, if you want to just call it a sensation, that's all it really is a sensation, albeit an uncomfortable one, then that may stop your mind from going down some habitual habit of pushing your pain away, or you know what I mean? It may trigger some habitual ways of placating or running from pain, right? So all pain really is a sensation. So the most important part of that, though, is that when you realize that I am the one that is aware that the sensation is there, now you are getting somewhere. Regardless of what the sensation is, I am the one that is aware of the sensation. I am not the sensation. How can I know that I am not the sensation? Don't believe anything I say. Remember that. It should all make sense to you. How do I know for a fact that I am not the sensation? Because I am observing it. And if it can be observed, can it be me? Nope. Nope. Your thoughts are observed. Your idea of yourself is observed. Your discomfort is observed. What is observing? That is ineffable. And the observing, the interesting thing about the observing is that if I really want to observe and bring my attention to my discomfort, I can inflame it. I can aggravate it. I can make it grow. I take my attention away from it. What happens? What happens? Yeah. It can disappear. It can go away. But when the pain disappears, do you disappear? What is that which remains? That is ineffable. That is what you have to experience directly in order to know my words, know this truth. The way that you experience it directly is in spiritual practice. And when I say spiritual practice, I don't mean religious or anything like that. I mean creating the causes and conditions for your mind to be peaceful and for you to come into presence. Present awareness in the moment. Proper diet, nutrition, hydration, exercise, meditation, clean house, bills paid. All of these things that create distractions in your mind, in your head, you want to get rid of them. So you have an undistracted mind. Mind that stay present in the moment. Stop judging. You're giving your mind less and less things to do. Less and less things to do. Less thinking, not more thinking. Less and less and less. And you begin to realize, I don't need to be thinking all the time. In fact, I don't even really like thinking. Most of the time, it's just this running of my mind. It's like I'm on some treadmill the whole time. What's that treadmill that you run on? That one that Frankie has?
Oh, it's the bike. It's the assault bike.
The assault bike. They have... Yeah. They got exercise equipment called like assault equipment. That's like what my mind is. I got like an assault mind, you know what I mean? And it's just assaulting me constantly. And it's, you know.
I'm still stuck on the definition of who am I, or how to identify or describe who I am, you know, without the usual way of doing it, and to bring it into a concept, like you were saying. You walk out of here, you get hit with a coconut, and if I woke up from that and you said, "You're a doctor," I'd go, "Oh, okay, I guess," and then I would sort of have a picture of what to do and where to go. I guess I got to go over to the hospital and operate. But if I woke up from that crack on the head with a coconut and you just said something like, "Well, you are who you are," I'd be like, "Okay, now what do I do? I mean, where do I go?"
What if
I'm stuck.
You know, what if I just said that you are? What if I left the who out?
Okay.
You just are.
And see, I understand that when I'm sitting here in meditation. I'm being serious.
Yeah.
But I don't understand on a practical level of that. That's where I'm
Listen, in a relative way, you know, absolute reality, relative reality, right? Which are difficult concepts I don't like to talk about because I don't have that polished enough yet. But, you know, in a relative way, you know, I'm Tom, you're Greg, right? And it's, whatever, 20 minutes to 9, and it's Wednesday. And in a relative way, that's useful. You know, we're in the world, okay? And this is how we navigate. This is how we know how to be, you know, here at a specific time and all of that. You know, we don't, you know, just go bonkers that way. We're not identified with it anymore. We see through the ruse. And in the absolute reality, absolutely, there's not, it's not, you're not Greg, I'm not Tom, there's no Wednesday, there's no time, there's none of that. But in the relativity of this experience, you know, we can use that, but see it clearly from a conscious place. Okay? Right now, we're all moving like 11,000 miles an hour or something like that. Through the galaxy. But relative to each other, we're not moving at all, so we don't notice. Relative to the Earth, we're not moving. That's why when people jump out of a plane, they say they don't feel like they're falling. Because it's relative to nothing, you know, until they start getting closer to Earth and they can get more of a sense. That was Einstein's theory of relativity. Brilliant. But relativity is just such a very interesting word. But the truth is that yes, you just are. And the rest is just mind stuff. And if you want proof of that, your entire life is proof of that. Think about, I hate to tell you to think, but look back on all of the thinking that you've done in your life. Think about, you know, just look at the times that were very difficult and what that was like in your mind. The times that were very good. What was that like in your mind? It's all of this just mind stuff. It's all just mind stuff. And humanity is at the forefront now of evolving beyond mind stuff, because the mind stuff is the cause of all of our problems. The mind is using us. We are not using the mind. And this is the juxtaposition that humanity is craving. That we are going to use the mind as a tool, and the mind is no longer going to use us. You all looking at me like I'm crazy. I have your attention though, don't I? Because somewhere down deep inside you know this. This is why these teachings are so compelling. Because they're making sense of something that you always knew but couldn't make sense of. Because we were born into an unconscious world, born into a mind-identified world, and lived like that was normal. Did you ever hear the story of, there was a guy, in North Korea, if someone commits a crime, they punish that person and 2 generations. So there are people that are born in concentration camps in North Korea, being punished for the crimes of their parents and grandparents, right? There was a story of a guy, he was a young man, and he was born into the camp, in a big fenced-in camp. It was all he knew. The only thing that he knew about this world was that camp. And some of the rules of the camp were that if someone was plotting to escape from the camp, you were required to turn them in. Okay? So, his mother and his sister were plotting to escape. So, he turned them in. He told the guard what they were doing. And the guards took him and they dragged his mother and his sister out into the field and killed his mother and his sister right in front of him. And you know what he said? And he later escaped to tell this story. He said, at the time, what I was thinking was, well, they got what they deserved. They knew the rules of the camp and they shouldn't have done that. And when he finally escaped the camp and then saw this whole other world that he didn't really know, that he didn't know existed, he was mortified by what he had done. I mean, do you see what's going on? When I say that you live in a world that is in your mind, that your mind is your world, I mean that so literally. But there's something beyond that world. Something ineffable, something undescribable that is now identified as mind. And Greg, as you keep coming, as you keep whittling away, this is typically not something that someone comes in here and listens to this once and goes, oh, now I get it, and walks out. It's not like that. Your mind is going to fight. Your mind is going to, you've got to keep coming back and just keep picking at it and just keep picking at it because there's something here to be picked at. And you've got to kind of whittle it down to where the leap is smaller. To to where it becomes easier to make that leap. When you've had direct experiences of mindlessness, of pure presence, of pure awareness, and all of a sudden you're starting to experience directly what I'm saying, because right now you're trying to mentally understand what I'm saying. That is a dog chasing its tail. It's the best you can do right now, you know? As you get into your spiritual practice and you practice this every day, you begin to experience what I'm telling you. Experience what I'm pointing to you to. And when you directly experience it, you go, oh, that's what you meant. And you won't be able to describe it either. Interesting. I love these conversations. You know, you got to just stick with it, practice, and come back and ask questions about your practice. Because you got to know what you're practicing, why. You got to really sharpen your practice. You know, you got to ask questions. You got to practice and ask questions so that I can help clear up your misunderstandings about what I'm saying and what you're hearing. It's a great difficulty for me. And even what I'm saying and what I'm intending to say. Because sometimes they're not the same thing. And so the communication just in general is horribly flawed.
Let this work.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So to me, it sounds like what you've been saying tonight is to replace, shift the old habits that we have that aren't working for us. And it's like putting one foot in front of the other. Start with just creating better habits, and that in the end releases the mind from all of this pain or negativity or whatever we're in.
Generally speaking, yes. The first thing that I want you to realize tonight is how habitual you are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I was walking out the door every day and making a right for 10 years, and then I decided, okay, I'm going to walk out the door and make a left now, how many times do you think I would walk out the door, make a right, and walk away before... You know, did you ever move and then find yourself driving home to your old place? You know?
Sure.
And so the first thing that I want you to recognize is how habitual you are. And then I want you to start to develop a devotion to your spiritual practice to get right in the face of your habits. You know what I mean? To say no to your habits consciously. The hardest part about habits is even realizing they're there. I mean, my God, it's so hard to see. It's so hard to see. You know? But what you see are the results that keep showing up. The same result, the same result, the same result.
Well, one of the exercises way long time ago when I took psychology in school was to go to a destination a different way every single time.
Wow.
And it's sort of trains
There you go. Perfect. I love that.
your mind to think differently and not be in the habit of taking that right turn to get to where you normally go.
That is so awesome.
And it explores and opens up new ways and new pathways, first of all in the brain, and second of all in the habit, and third of all in the experience of what you discover along the way. Oh, I didn't know that park was there or that store was there or whatever.
I'm so going to pilfer that.
So, yeah.
How annoying would it be to go home a different way every time? Doesn't that make it like kind of aggravated?
Not
Like-
me, but
but do you see, like, that's such a great example, and then we'll get to our meditation, okay? And I know some of you are working in the morning, but, like, go home a different way tonight. It will aggravate the shit out of your mind. Because it's not familiar. It's not, you know what I mean? It's such a great example of what I'm talking about. And it's so simple and so easy to see. Like, if you went a different way home, a way you've never went before, wouldn't that be like a totally weird and uncomfortable? Feel like you have your shoes on backwards. But it challenges that, it gets you out of the groove. I love that. I'll probably start doing that. Not tonight, but.
It's hard to do in Florida because everything.
Yeah. Yeah, there's only one way.
but in New York it was much easier.
Yeah. Everything's on 95, right? So, it's really interesting. The road less traveled. But that's a great example of what I'm talking about. Appreciate that. So, all right. So, does anybody want to stand up and stretch or use the facilities before we meditate? Bugs are getting me. Thanks for being here, Facebook peeps. We love you. We're just going to wait for everybody to get settled. And we're going to wait for... Did anybody else walk out? No, just Dawn. Okay. Is Dawn leaving? Do we know? Did she leave her stuff here? Okay. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow. Hmm. He definitely recharges my batteries, and I really look forward to going home and spending time with him. I mean that so sincerely. When he's not just something that I own or some object of mine or something like that. He's a being that's there, and we connect, and it's the strangest thing because like I'll say to him sometimes, say, Willow, don't do, stop doing that and please come down from there. And he'll go look at me and he'll just walk down. I mean, he does that often, you know what I mean? Almost every time I ask him. It's we communicate with our eyes. He and I, we connect eyes all the time, which is really unusual. But
See, I look forward to seeing my dogs.
yeah, right?
And their eyes, you're right, it's just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's,
You feel so much just looking in their eyes.
yeah, you really do. You feel the connection. The eyes are the window to the soul, right? All right, well, we're going to get started, and Dawn can tiptoe in. So sit comfortably, and I'll ring the bell. take a few moments to relax yourself in your own way. I encourage you to breathe more and more slowly until you're breathing as slowly as possible without it being uncomfortable. Just relax. Now, as you're sitting here with me, take a few moments to just notice what's going on inside you without thinking about it. Just observe it. Even if a thought arises about something you're observing, notice that even that thought is observed. And just watch what's going on inside you. Even if thoughts are what's happening inside you, just watch those. Don't even be interested in what they're about. Just let them come, let them go. Notice them. Now see if you can realize that you are not what is happening inside of you. Somehow, you are the one that is aware of what's happening inside you. who is the one, or what is the one that is aware of what's happening inside you, and don't make an idea out of it. Just be aware. Just see this clearly. That these thoughts, they come and go. These sensations, they come and go. But the one that is aware of the coming and going of what's going on inside you, that one never comes or goes. That one is always. That one always has been, always will be, unchanged. Now realize the silence in your mind, and lose interest, give no attention to any sensations or any thoughts. And just remain as the awareness, dwelling in silence. And if the attention is distracted for a moment by a thought or a sensation, it's okay. Just come right back to the silence and sit silently as the awareness, being simply aware until you hear the bell. No need to think. No need to give attention to thoughts. Dwell with the attention in the silence and just be. love you all very much. And it's always an honor to share this time and space with you. Free hugs at the end of class. And I wish you all a very happy, peaceful life.